So it's been raining all morning, and they're talking about putting the backdrop out here after the rain dies down a bit, hoping that it won't start back up again. Good luck to that. So I got a last minute call for this prom party, and when I mean by last minute, I mean 5 days before the event. So she wanted balloons cascading down her staircase, and she also was going to have this 8-foot tall by 8-foot wide silver shimmer wall, which she installed, by the way. And I'm going to show you why that's important later on in this video. But she wanted a large balloon garland going around this shimmer wall. So the colors that I'm using are Reflex Arctic Blue, Reflex Silver, and Satin White. And this is Sempertex brand in sizes 5-inch, 11-inch, and 18-inch. And I'm just blowing up 2 balloons at a time, releasing air to round out the balloons, and then tying them together into dupes. So when making my clusters, I'm going to use 4 dupes or 8 balloons. 2 of them are going to have an 11-inch and an 18-inch balloon tied together, and the other 2 are going to have 2 11-inch balloons tied together. So right now I'm twisting my 4 dupes into a cluster, and when you twist, you want to double twist so that the dupes are in there nice and secure. So that is a total of 4 dupes or 8 balloons. Now, when connecting my clusters together, I usually use 2 methods. The 260 method, which is the first method I'm showing you. I'm taking a 260 balloon, tying the ends together to make a rubber band. And then I'm just going to wrap that 260 around a couple balloons in one cluster. And then I'm going to get another cluster of balloons and then wrap that 260 around 2 to 3 balloons in that cluster. And I'm usually wrapping it around the 11-inch balloons. So I'm just going to show you how I do that again. And again, you want to aim for the smaller balloons when wrapping the 260 around because you could fit more balloons in there. It's easier to do that. So this method makes for a solid fit, but you can also remove the clusters if need be. The next method I'm using is the necktie method. So you're going to take one neck and one of the balloons in one cluster and make sure you stretch it out real good. And take another neck from another balloon in the other cluster, and then you're just going to tie them together. So cross the 2 necks together, wrap one around the other, and then just tie it into a knot. And that's how you use the necktie method. And this makes the clusters really secure. Now, when it was time to install for the stairs, I took a 260 balloon. Those are Sempertex brand, by the way. And then I'm going to tie that 260 balloon in the middle of my cluster. Then you want to take your cluster and push it down in between the stairs. You want it nice and tight and snug in between those stairs so it doesn't pop off. And then you're going to take the 260 in the middle of the cluster and you're going to wrap it under the stairs and around the balloons at least 2 times, and then tie the 260 into itself so you can make sure it's on there nice and secure. Now I'm adding another cluster. So you want to push it in between the stairs again, and you want to push it down to where you're closing out any gaps between the 2 clusters. And then you're going to take a 260, you're going to tie it into that cluster there. And then you're going to wrap that 260 around a couple balloons in the previous cluster and wrap it back around the new cluster and then even underneath the stairway so it's nice and secure on the stairs. And then you're going to tie that 260 into itself. I just want to show you how it looks with the 260 tied into itself. So now I'm just going to add my clusters this way. I'm tying a 260 in the middle of the larger clusters. And then I'm going to firmly press that cluster down onto the stairs. Then I'm going to take a 260 and tie the front of that new cluster to the back of the previous cluster and then tie the 260 into itself. And then I'm going to tie that middle 260 around the stairs and then tie it into itself to make sure the clusters are secure. Then I'm just rearranging my balloons to cover up gaps on the stairway. So I'm adding my balloons into somewhat of a pattern. I didn't want it to be this matchy pattern of blue, silver, white, blue, silver, white. And I didn't want all my clusters to be the same size. So my base cluster started off with 4 dupes or 8 balloons, but some of the clusters I made bigger by tying the necks together or using the 260 balloons, and I made them into 8 dupes or 16 balloons, just like I'm doing right now. Now again, when I'm using the bigger clusters, I'm using 2 260s to attach them to the stairs, 1 in the front to attach it to the previous cluster, and then 1 in the middle to attach it to the actual stairway. And again, I'm not doing a perfect pattern, as you can see. I'm not just doing blue, silver, and white. I'm actually switching up the colors and switching up my pattern throughout as I'm going up and across the staircase. Now you can do whatever pattern you want. I just felt like this was more interesting to me. I wanted to do something different. So now I'm just adding some balloons so that they touch the floor from the stairway. I wanted it to, look very nice, like it's cascading down instead of abruptly stopping on the staircase. So now it's time to add my finishing touches with my 5-inch decorators. I'm just using a manual balloon pump to blow up 2 balloons at a time, then tie them together into a dupe. And then I'm going to twist 2 dupes together and then tie a 260 on each of these dupes so that I can connect those to the balloon garland. So you just want to wrap that 260 around the balloon in the balloon garland and then tie that 260 into itself. And that's how you attach your 5-inch decorators. And I added about 2 5-inch clusters to each big cluster and 1 5-inch cluster to each smaller cluster. So here is the finished product. So if you want to know how many balloons I used, unfortunately, I have to tell you that I lost count. However, when purchasing Sempertex balloons, they do sell them by the size. So for this garland, I purchased 100 5-inch balloons in each color, 100 11-inch balloons in each color, and 25 18-inch balloons in each color. So of course I did not use all of those balloons for this balloon garland, but I did use the leftover balloons towards the balloon garland that I made for the silver shimmer wall. Now when making the garland for the shimmer wall, I purchased an additional pack of 11-inch balloons for each color, for a total of 825 balloons purchased for both projects. Now, I did not use all 825 balloons, but you always want to make sure you buy more balloons than necessary. Remember when I mentioned that the client was the one that provided the silver shimmer wall? I wanted to point that out because, as you can see, she didn't buy enough panels to completely touch the ground. You want to make sure that you accurately calculate how many shimmer panels you're going to need for the size of the backdrop you want. So the client loved the decorations, and when the rain died down, they did eventually move the shimmer wall out onto the backyard. Luckily for them, it didn't rain too much after that. So if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, go ahead on and like it, and please subscribe, and you'll get notifications of future videos on balloon and event decor. And until next time, I will see you guys later.